Welcome back to the macroeconomic management and sustainable development. In the last lecture, we have discussed the basic concepts of macroeconomics. What is macroeconomics? What is sustainable development? And we have seen the role of disasters in constraining the development of a country. In the present video lecture, I hope by the end of this lecture, you will be able to understand the process of evaluating the impact of a disaster and the role of mitigation and preparedness in reducing the impact of a disaster. Moving ahead, as we have discussed in the earlier lecture that disasters, they will hinder the development of a nation. The disasters will create an impact on a nation, and how to evaluate the impact of a disaster. So, when you are studying the impact of a disaster, when you are trying to evaluate the impact of a disaster, we are supposed to understand the vulnerabilities, the exposures to that particular disaster. So, that is what we will see now. Seeing the first sentence here, a country's disaster vulnerability is the combined interaction of the community exposure to the natural disasters, the susceptibility and defenselessness of the communities against the natural disasters, and the community capacities to resist the negative impacts among other social and economic interactions. This is a very big sentence. Now, once again I will say, a country's disaster vulnerability is the combined interaction of community exposure to natural disasters, the susceptibility and defenselessness of communities against natural disasters, and the community capacities to resist their negative impacts among other social and economic interactions. Now, we will discuss this one point by point. Now, what is the vulnerability? We will take, you might have heard about this Dharavi. We will take the example of Dharavi municipality, Dharavi area in Navi Mumbai. As you all know, Mumbai is the commercial capital of our country. And Dharavi is a place in Mumbai where it is home to nearly 8 lakh people. And you might have seen these pictures of Dharavi. The people will be just like they will be living in a single room or a 2-room. They will be closely, it will be just like a closely knitted one. So, all the people mostly there, they will be daily laborers and they do not have any knowledge upon this upcoming disasters or whatever it may be. They will consider this particular case of COVID-19. See now, in the case of COVID-19, the people of Dharavi who doesn't have proper knowledge and who doesn't have proper information regarding the upcoming COVID-19. And the first thing is they don't have any proper knowledge and they don't have any prior information because they don't get any news particularly from the external means. And besides that, most of the people are daily laborers. See, the first thing is they don't know anything about the disaster. They don't have any information to how to follow the social distancing and what are the precautions which are to be taken. Besides that, and since most of them are daily laborers because of the lockdown, see the negative impacts of these things. It will be difficult for them to get their daily earnings. It will be difficult for them to go through their livelihoods. Besides, they are not getting any information on the ongoing disasters. So, even if they don't go out in the lockdown, they will be staying back at homes. But the question is, big question, are they following the social distancing and are they following the precautions? No, I don't think so. So, because of these things, because of the place, because they do have very little amount of space, it is difficult for the 8 lakh people who are living there to maintain social distancing at least at the house and to the adjacent house. So, these people become the biggest vulnerability. And these people, they will get exposed to these things. So, what are the reasons for this exposure? They may be because of the social reasons, because of the economic reasons, whatever it may be. So because of all these reasons, these people, these are the vulnerabilities and exposures. That's what we are talking about. So it's not vulnerability, disaster vulnerability. This is to be considered. Whenever you are considering the impact of a disaster, it is just not calculating how many people are died, how many people are fatalities, how many fatalities you are expecting. It's not that. It is to understand the impact of a disaster. You are supposed to first understand the vulnerabilities. And next you see how many people are being exposed. If you can control these vulnerabilities and exposures, then automatically the impact can be reduced. So we don't need to fear for for the onset of a disaster. We don't need to fear for whatever the risk which we are going to face with the disaster, if we do have very good control on our vulnerabilities and exposures. So if the vulnerabilities and exposures are very, very low, even the number of disasters upcoming, let us suppose if COVID-19 is coming repeatedly every month also, we don't need to bother, because if we do have very less number of vulnerabilities and exposures. So this is what we say in the second point, that the risk of a disaster is always a function of the number of hazards, the vulnerabilities and the exposures. So all these three things, these two influence the disaster risk. So the three words, hazards, vulnerabilities and exposures, they will govern the disaster risk. Now what are hazards? Hazards are nothing but the natural calamities. We can consider the artificial calamities also. This one is also, COVID-19 is also one of such sort of calamity, one of such sort of hazard. So we will consider this one also. So hazards are these calamities and other things. Vulnerabilities are societal, economic and environmental aspects. Vulnerabilities are societal, economic and environmental aspects. And the exposures are nothing but the level of danger that the people and the property face in the event of these natural hazards. So all these three things, if people and the properties, if they are very, very safe, and if you have given proper instructions, and if you have taken proper measures, and if there are no vulnerabilities, even though if the hazards number is too high, then the risk will be very, very low. If the hazards number is very, very low, then the risk will be zero completely. If the hazards is very low in number, but the vulnerabilities and exposures are very, very high, then what can we do? The risk will be defaultly high. So on the whole, what we can say, risk is nothing but it is a function of hazards, vulnerabilities and exposures. See, this is a picture now. Hazards. Hazards are nothing but there's earthquakes, torrential rains, storms, etc., etc. All these are basically considered to be hazards. And vulnerabilities. It is nothing but our resistance, natural resistance, whether it is economic resistance. The people who do have a lot of money, they may be more resistant to the natural hazards or any other hazards because they do have money. They can have a bunker or some other things. If it is a social problem, let us suppose if a community is living there, they can take care of all those people. So vulnerability is nothing but the resistance against. It may be of social or economical or environmental or whatever may be the vulnerability. So vulnerability and exposure means all the people, property and livestock, etc. So all these, they do influence the disaster risk. Now, how to evaluate disaster risk? We will go in detail to evaluate the disaster risk now. As we have seen, let us suppose risk is a function. I will define the function as F1. F1 is a function of H, V and E. X, let us suppose Ex. Ex stands for exposure, V stands for vulnerability and H stands for hazards. Now let us suppose risk is a function of all these three terms. In turn, the vulnerabilities can be of any types. We can go with the social, economic or environmental. We will leave the environmental things. We will consider only the social or economic vulnerability. So in turn, V can be of social or economic. So I am considering one more term there. V is function of social or economic. So V is F2, which is another function, F2 of S and E. Now coming to the social terms. Now social means always there is a question. It is not social of your social science. Social is nothing but there will be different factors. Social vulnerability means it may be property, it may be education point of view, it may be health quality point of view, it may be the number of population or illiteracy. So all these factors, we will consider the basic factors of poverty, education, health quality and population. So now all these factors, they will affect the social indices of a nation. And on the other hand, economic vulnerability. On what factors does it depend upon the economic vulnerability? If we consider only the macroeconomics, a country, if we consider a country as a unit, then the economy level, the GDP of the country, the income level, the debts which we are facing. So all these do impact this economic vulnerabilities. So vulnerability is a small word, but this vulnerability can be social or economical. Again, social means there will be various factors. Again, economic means there will be different factors. So all these things are vulnerabilities, and these may affect your risk of the disaster. On the other hand, the Human Development Index, what we have seen in the first slide in the first video lecture, Human Development Index. How can we consider that the people of this particular nation have very good development? How can we consider that a country is very developed? It is measured in some terms, and it is common for every country. We don't have any specific terms, we do consider some common terms. Let us suppose if there is a country which has very high per capita income, and if all the people are very high illiterates, and nobody is having any health issues, then that country is considered to be a very developed, highly developed country. So why Africa is considered to be an underdeveloped continent? Why? Because the per capita income is very poor, most of the people are illiterates, and the health quality is also very low. That's why it is considered to be a very underdeveloped country. But then why is US and England and the European countries are considered to be very highly developed countries? Why? Because their per capita income is high. The education level, all the people are literates there. They are highly educated. So that's why the Human Development Index, it is always a function of per capita income. We will take only common terms: per capita income, education level and health quality. So like this, we will be evaluating the disaster risk. Now I hope, okay, I'll continue with this slide and we will end this particular session. Now, how these natural disasters, they will affect this human development. If the human development is very high, which means that if the per capita income is very high, if the people are highly literate, highly educated, and they do have very good health levels, then automatically the impact of a disaster will be very low. If the people are not educated properly, if the income is very low, then automatically the impact will be very high. That is what the many reports say. See the first point there. Several reports imply that the human loss and suffering are considerably higher in countries with low human development. The HDI, what we call it as Human Development Index, it incorporates literacy rates, life expectancy and per capita income. That's what we have seen in the last slide. And improving this HDI by taking some initiatives. If we start improving the HDI, then automatically it will reduce the impact of the natural disasters in any country. See, since hydroclimatic disasters, they occur very frequently, they will cause more amount of human losses and sufferings compared to geophysical disasters. They must be of due importance in investment and disaster reductions. When compared to the geophysical disasters, means like the earthquake or so, these hydroclimatic disasters like the cyclones or floods, they will occur more in number when compared to the number of earthquakes which we do experience. So your development, your initiatives must be taken in that way, not to. So you better go with this hydroclimatic disasters, you study them, you take some proper initiatives how to reduce the vulnerabilities and exposures with respect to the hydroclimatic disasters. Then it will surely improve the human development level of a particular country. And the most important thing, the country's income level, it plays a crucial role in shortening the recovery period after a disaster. If the country has huge number of resources, see the country, US country, it has a, the reports say that nearly $2 trillion have been kept aside for recovery of that particular country. See, this is a highly developed country, they do have very good amount of income, that's why they can recover it very fast. That's what we think. So I'll keep an end to this session and we'll continue in the next session. What is the role of mitigation and preparedness in reducing the disaster risk? Thank you.